We live in the Gilded Age on steroids, a time where the gap between the haves and the have-nots has widened into a canyon that you can't jump across, and increasingly, you can't even see across. At the very top of this mountain sit the billionaires. It's easy to dismiss the anti-billionaire sentiment as jealousy. It's easy to say, they worked hard, stop hating. And sure, envy exists, but if you look closely at the mechanics of extreme wealth concentration in the 21st century, you realize something unsettling. The anger isn't just noise, it isn't just envy. The anger is a rational response to a system that has been meticulously engineered to funnel resources upward and lock everyone else out. Today, we're putting aside the pitchforks and picking up the calculator. We're going to walk through, point by point, the 16 legitimate structural reasons why people despise the billionaire class. And the uncomfortable truth is, they aren't wrong. Let's start with the basics. The math itself is offensive. Reason number one, the human brain cannot comprehend $1 billion. We aren't wired for it. If 1 grain of rice is $100,000, a life-changing amount of money for most people, that's 1 grain. $1 million is 10 grains, a small pile. $1 billion is 10,000 grains. A Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk fortune, that's millions of grains of rice. It's enough rice to feed entire nations. When people hate billionaires, they are hating the concept of unspendable wealth existing alongside poverty. It's the realization that the scarcity we are told exists in the world is, to some degree, artificial. Which brings us to how they keep that pile so big. Reason 2, they play by a different rulebook called buy, borrow, die. You and I pay income tax. We work, we get paid, the government takes a slice. Billionaires don't have income in the traditional sense. Their wealth is parked in assets, stocks, real estate. When their stock goes up by $10 billion in a year, that's unrealized gains. The IRS can't touch it. So how do they buy the yacht? They don't sell the stock and pay tax. No, they walk into a bank and say, I have $100 billion in stock. Lend me $100 million cash at a 2% interest rate using the stock as collateral. They live tax-free on borrowed money. When they die, the cost basis of the assets resets for their heirs, wiping out the tax liability forever. People hate this because it isn't illegal, it's rigged. But where does that wealth come from initially? Reason 3, the Great Decoupling. For the last 40 years, American workers have become vastly more productive. We are churning out more goods and services per hour than ever before. Historically, when productivity went up, wages went up. You made more stuff, you got paid more. Around the 1980s, that stopped. The profits generated by increased efficiencies stopped going to the workers and started going almost exclusively to shareholders and executives. The billionaire class was largely built on the back of this stolen productivity. People feel robbed because, statistically, they were. Reason 4, the illusion of competition. We love the idea of the free market, may the best product win, but modern billionaire wealth is often built on destroying the free market. In tech, venture capitalists talk about kill zones. If a startup begins to look like a threat to Google, Amazon, or Meta, the giants have 2 moves: buy them out or clone their product and undercut their prices until they bleed to death. This isn't competition, it's feudalism. People hate that their choices are often just 5 different brands owned by the same guy. And once you have monopoly money, you want monopoly power over the rules. Reason 5, they can buy the referees. In the US, particularly post-Citizens United, money is speech. And if you have $1 billion, you have a megaphone the size of Jupiter, and the rest of us are whispering. It's called the wealth primary. Before you even get to vote for a candidate, donors have vetted them. They ensure that issues threatening extreme wealth, like serious tax reform or robust labor laws, are rarely brought to the table. People hate billionaires because they feel their vote counts for less than a billionaire's donation.
So they have the money and they rig the system to keep it. What does that do to the rest of us and the planet we live on? It is maddening to watch the ultra-wealthy lecture ordinary citizens on turning down the thermostat or using paper straws, while they emit more carbon in a single cross-country private jet flight than the average person does in an entire year. Their lifestyle is incompatible with a sustainable future, yet they are often the faces of green initiatives. It feels like a sick joke.
Reason 6 is perhaps the most mathematically infuriating: the human subsidy. Critics often call this socializing the costs while privatizing the profits. Here is how it works. A multi-billion-dollar corporation owned by a billionaire pays its essential workers so little that those employees cannot afford basic necessities, food, healthcare, or housing. Because these people still need to eat and see a doctor to survive and show up for work the next day, the government steps in with taxpayer-funded programs like SNAP or Medicaid. In many cases, the very companies owned by the world's richest people have the highest number of employees on public assistance. This is, in effect, a massive hidden subsidy. We, the taxpayers, are essentially topping off the low wages of these companies so that the billionaire owners don't have to. We are paying to keep their workforce alive so they can keep their profit margins record high. People hate this because it feels like a double theft. You're taxed to support a social safety net, but that net is being used to pad the bottom line of the wealthiest people on Earth. It turns the concept of charity or welfare into a corporate tool for wealth extraction. When a billionaire says they created thousands of jobs, people look at the fine print and see that the taxpayers are actually co-signing the paycheck.
Reason 7 ties into their ego, the myth of meritocracy. We love a rags to riches story, but the data shows that the single biggest predictor of future wealth is past wealth. Did some billionaires start with nothing? A few, but the vast majority started on third base and act like they hit a triple. They had seed capital from parents, elite educations, safety nets that allowed them to take risks that would bankrupt a normal person. People hate the revisionist history that pretends their success happened in a vacuum of pure individual brilliance, ignoring the infrastructure and societal support that made it possible.
Reason 8 is painful to remember. They profit from our pain. During the 2008 crash, millions lost their homes while Wall Street got bailed out. During the COVID-19 pandemic, while small businesses were decimated and workers faced mass layoffs, America's billionaires added over $1 trillion to their collective wealth. When the world burns, they don't just survive. They buy up distressed assets for pennies on the dollar. They treat global crises as shopping sprees. Reason 9. Philanthropy as unaccountable power. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but they give so much away. Look at the Gates Foundation. That brings us to reason 9, philanthropy as unaccountable power. When a government spends tax money on public health or education, there is at least a theoretical mechanism for democratic accountability. We can vote the bums out. When a billionaire decides to reshape the American education system according to their personal philosophy, nobody elected them to do that. Philanthropy often serves as reputation laundering, using charitable giving to distract from the exploitative business practices that created the wealth in the first place. It turns systemic problems into pet projects for the rich. And sometimes those pet projects leave the atmosphere entirely. Reason 10. The billionaire space race. Now, I love space exploration, but watching the richest men on Earth blast themselves into orbit in phallic rockets while the planet below them deals with climate change, poverty, and crumbling infrastructure, it reads less like human progress and more like an escape plan. It is the ultimate manifestation of an ego that has outgrown the Earth itself. Reason 11 is about the resources right here on Earth.
the housing crisis. We are told there is a housing shortage, but in major cities around the world, billionaires hold vast amounts of real estate, not as homes, but as safety deposit boxes in the sky. They sit empty, appreciating assets while essential workers are priced out of the cities they service. When money becomes this concentrated, it distorts the price of basic human needs. We've talked about the money, the politics, and the environment. But the final reasons people hate billionaires are deeper. They are about what this level of inequality does to the human psyche and the fabric of society. Reason 12. They don't live on the same planet as us. When you have billions, you are insulated from the consequences of daily life. You don't wait in line at the DMV. You don't worry about copays at the doctor. You don't worry about crime because you have private security. This insulation breeds a dangerous lack of empathy. They make decisions that affect millions of workers without ever having to look one in the eye. The hate stems from the feeling that they are piloting the ship, but they have the only lifeboats. Reason 13. They own the microphone. Why do we so often hear that taxing the rich will destroy the economy, despite evidence to the contrary? Because the people who own the media outlets have a vested interest in you believing that. They frame the narrative. They decide what is radical and what is sensible. People resent knowing that their newsfeed is curated by the very people benefiting from the status quo.
Reason 14 is complex but crucial: the financialization of everything. The billionaire class, largely driven by hedge funds and private equity, has shifted the economy away from making things and toward moving money around. They buy companies, load them with debt, extract the fees, and leave the carcass to rot. Toys R Us, Sears, beloved brands destroyed not because they didn't have customers, but because they were more valuable to finance ghouls dead than alive. Reason 15. They are pulling up the ladder behind them. The American dream is predicated on the idea that if you work hard, your kids will do better than you did. That dream is statistically dying. Extreme wealth concentration calcifies a class system. It creates an aristocracy where your birth determines your future more than your effort. People hate billionaires because they represent the closing of the door on opportunity for everyone else. And finally, reason 16, the most damaging one of all. The feeling that the game is rigged leads to societal nihilism. If you know that no matter how hard you work, you will never catch up, if you know the rules don't apply to the people at the top, why bother playing by them? This breeds cynicism, crime, social unrest, and political polarization. The hatred of billionaires isn't just about their bank accounts. It's about the nagging, painful realization that our society is no longer organized around the betterment of the many, but the enrichment of the very, very few. Conclusion. So, there you have it, 16 reasons. It's important to state this. This isn't about hating individuals. I'm sure some billionaires are perfectly nice people to have dinner with. This is about hating a system that allows this level of accumulation to exist. $1 billion is not a reward for working 1 billion times harder than a teacher or a nurse. $1 billion is a policy failure. It's a glitch in the matrix of capitalism that we have allowed to become a feature. When people express anger toward billionaires, they aren't just being jealous haters. They are looking at a world that is burning, looking at the people holding the fire extinguishers who are busy selling the water for a profit, and saying, "This is wrong." And the hard truth is, they aren't wrong. If you found this breakdown helpful or depressing or infuriating, hit that like button and subscribe. We cover the intersection of money and society every week, trying to make sense of a nonsensical economy. Let me know in the comments, did I miss a reason? And more importantly, what do we do about it? Thanks for watching.